Maybe I will show up again in some of these classes because I will probably have more questions by tomorrow. But thank you. Have a nice day. And a Merry Christmas because it's around the... Yes. Bye.
Yeah, definitely. Merry Christmas, man. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Eric, you can't do Santa voices. Santa is blasphemous. Anyways, just goof around. So, hope that's clear. Hope that helps. Let's bring up the next guest. Yehuda Yisrael, you are on stage, bro.
Shalom Aleichem. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Excellent, yeah. Thanks for having me on. So I wanted to, when I have these, I told you I'm a modern Orthodox Jew. I do, counter-missionary stuff on my channel, whatever. So I guess to introduce like my approach of discussing, messianic prophecy with Christians, I like to come at it from an approach of mutually agreed upon criteria from the Hebrew Bible, and based upon how do we isolate which passages both Christians and Jews agree refer exclusively to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else. So if you would allow me to, I'd like to sort of start at a point of agreement and see where we kind of veer off course, if that's okay with you.
We could start there and see what happens, sure.
Okay, thank God. Okay, so what we'll do is in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16, I see this as a prophecy that, now this isn't exclusive to the Messiah, but I think it's the core prophecy that establishes what the Messiah is and what he will, in the most generic sense. Okay. But it isn't exclusive, but we'll get to some prophecies later that are based on this exegetical criteria set up here. Okay?
Okay.
So it says, when your days are finished, when, it's talking to David contextually, God is speaking to David. When your days are finished and you shall lie with your forefathers, then I will raise up your seed that shall proceed from your body after you, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish his throne and of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me, so that when he goes astray, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the rod of men, basically saying that it's unconditional, because this is speaking, I believe, about King Solomon in the immediate context, but when we keep reading, it says, but my mercy shall not depart from him, as I withdrew it from Saul, who I removed from before you. And then this verse, and your house and your kingdom shall be confirmed before you, and your throne shall be established forever. So I think we both agree, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this in the immediate context refers to King Solomon, but can also have sort of a double meaning and also apply to the future Messiah. Would we be in agreement on that?
Sure, I think it's messianic.
Yeah, but it's not exclusively messianic, because obviously it's speaking, it talks about sinful King Solomon, right? So we wouldn't say that this is exclusive, but it's pretty specific, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize the criteria here that seem to be unique to the Messiah. Would we agree that it refers to a Davidic king who will establish David's throne basically at the end of days?
Sure.
Okay, great. So the next prophecy that I see, and I think we both agree this is referring to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else, is Hosea chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. So it says, for the children of Israel shall remain for many days, having neither king, nor prince, nor sacrifice, nor pillar, nor ephod, nor teraphim. And that says, afterwards, the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they shall come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness at the end of days. So I think we're in agreement, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when it says David their king in Hosea 3:5, that is exclusive to the Messiah and no one else. Are we in agreement?
I mean, I think that's a pretty strong prophecy. Yeah, I think we both would agree that, and I do believe it's referring to the Messiah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, excellent, yeah. So we see, and this is based off of that mutually agreed upon criteria that we said from 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16. So we have a consistent exegetical thread started. So what's interesting is if we go to Ezekiel 37, right, we have the same sort of theme where it talks about an exile, before the, coming of this Davidic king. It says that the children of Israel are going to be scattered in verse 21, for example, and then it says they're going to be brought back. And then on verse 24, it says, "And my servant David shall be king over them, and one shepherd shall be for all of them, and they shall walk in my ordinances and my statutes and perform them." So that also, will we both agree that when it says, "My servant David shall be king over them," that is referring exclusively to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else.
Sure.
Right, so we have this consistent threat. And there's one more. Basically what we're seeing exegetically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Davidic king, rule at the end of days, establish eternal kingdom, and that's all based on that golden thread going back to 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it again in Jeremiah 30, right? If you want to, it talks about an exile, restoring the captivity prior to this coming. And then, it says, "I'll, break the yoke off of you." And then it says, and it uses actually the exact same wording as Hosea 3, verse 5 and verse 9, when it says, "After, I will break his yoke off at your neck," and, basically like you're going to come back from exile and be reunited in the land. It says, "And they shall serve the Lord their God and David their king, who I will set up for them." So it uses that same language there. So when it says David their king, we both agree that's also exclusive to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else. Just like in Hosea 3:5.
Okay.
So excellent. So we have a very consistent standard of, we all agree that this Davidic king who will rule at the end of days is the Messiah. In those three passages, Hosea 3, verse 5, David their king, my servant David, in Ezekiel 37, verse 24, and in Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 9. So I wanted to explore consistent themes with all of those prophecies, which exegetically fit that criteria, going back to 2 Samuel 7, verses 12 through 16, about this Davidic king, that the timeline of all these three prophecies that we agree that this Davidic king will come, it appears that they consistently say that the king will come at the end of days.
Okay.
For example, in Hosea 3, it says, "The children of Israel will remain many days having no king, no prince, no sacrifice," right? Up until that time that Davidic king will rule.
Right. I think you and I agree with that. That's a pretty powerful prophecy right there. Because that's exactly what's happened, right?
Right. We don't have a king. So
Right.
So that's exactly what's happening, right? We don't have a sacrifice. Yeah.
Okay.
So great. So we're in agreement that today we have no king and we have no sacrifice. But at the end of days, we will. When the Messiah comes.
When the Messiah comes?
Yeah, David their king.
It says they'll seek David their king.
Yes, at the end of days.
Mm-hmm.
But it says prior to that end of days point, we won't have a king and we won't have a sacrifice. So that's where we are today.
Okay, so what are you driving at?
Can you see what I'm driving at? I don't know. Like, is it obvious? Like, I'm establishing a timeline of when the Messiah comes at the end of days, right? There's no necessity for the Messiah to come before that time, is what I'm saying. Consistently, we have Davidic king prophecies that we have an exegetical standard of this Davidic king coming at the end of days. There's no necessity that this Davidic king must come before that time, according to the consistent standard that we've developed.
Don't your own rabbis? I mean, I don't have the exact quotes in front of me right now. Didn't they think that he was coming around the 1st century and like it didn't happen, and then they thought it was Bar Kokhba, and then they're like, "Hey, it's too late. We must have been sinful." So he decided not to come, at least for now. I mean, isn't that like quotes from your own rabbis?
From the rabbis, they actually say that Hezekiah could have been Messiah, but also, like, every generation, there's a potential. If you want to be really consistent with what the rabbis say, they didn't say that the only time the Messiah could have possibly come was during the Second Temple.
We would say
period.
that the Messiah comes twice: once to deal with sins, and the other time there's 2 stages. And so I don't really see a problem from a Christian perspective.
I know that's what you say. I guess I find it interesting that we agree with these three consistent prophecies that have an exegetical standard that we all agree upon, right? You agreed that this Davidic king from that prophecy in 2 Samuel, right? That's the strongest exegetical criteria that I think we have, because we both agree on that. So clearly there is a standard that Jews and Christians agree that the Messiah will be a Davidic king who rules at the end of days. So where do we divide from that, right? That's the question, right? It's also interesting that it says the Lord their God and David their king, right? It makes a distinction between those. I find that interesting. And then also, yeah.
Yeah, but then he calls in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, he calls the Davidic king mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, and he says that his kingdom has no end.
Yeah, so similar to what we discussed in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16. Remember we said that King Solomon, even though he was sinful, he's in the immediate context being referred to there? We agreed on that, right?
Yeah, but what does that have to do with what I'm saying?
Because when you look at Isaiah 9, what's very interesting is, I think in verse 7 in your Bible, but in other Bibles it says, it talks about, it says, in token of abundant authority and a peace without limit upon David's throne and kingdom that may be firmly established in justice and equity from now and to eternity. So now would mean in Isaiah's generation, which would correspond to the king in that time. So
you're not going to try to say this is Hezekiah, are you?
That's what it says. It says from now. And if you look at Isaiah's timeline, right, Hezekiah fits perfectly with that time. So what does now into eternity mean? That would be my question to you. What does now mean? When Isaiah says from now into eternity regarding Isaiah 9, what does that mean to you? What does now mean?
What does now mean?
Yeah, from now into eternity. The Hebrew says me'atav yad olam, and the translations that you'll see in your translation, even up there, it'll say like from henceforth, right, and to evermore. So what does that mean, right? It says from this time.
His kingdom wasn't an everlasting kingdom. He showed the people his treasury, and then ended up his sons were thrown into exile. Like, what are you talking about, man?
Well, remember what I said about the first prophecy we discussed, right? It referred to King Solomon in the immediate context. So
Hezekiah is referred to as mighty God?
Do you know what Hezekiah's name means in Hebrew?
Yeah, dude, but like...
What does it mean?
No, do I know what it means?
Yeah.
No, go ahead, tell me.
It means God strengthens. So I don't think that's a coincidence that God would use that name.
That's a stretch, bro. That is a stretch.
I think it's a bigger stretch. I personally think it's a bigger stretch to ignore the immediate context when Isaiah says now and say, well, this has nothing to do with the greatest king of Judah who had more faith in God than any other king, literally had one of the most miraculous things happen, destroyed an army, had
and
a
then
peace.
Immediately showed his treasury to a bunch of foreign invaders, and his kids, his family was thrown into captivity. His own son worshipped idols as soon as he died.
That's true.
Like how you could say that this would apply to
only the now part. Remember,
to me,
right?
This would have to refer to the Messiah.
I didn't say it didn't refer to the Messiah. I want to be clear on that. Remember, just like the first prophecy that we discussed, remember, sinful Solomon is in. Remember, we agreed in the first prophecy that we discussed when I came on here, right? 2 Samuel 7, right? You said that referred to the Messiah and sinful Solomon, correct? Second Samuel chapter 7 verses.
Sure. So why couldn't this apply to
Hezekiah and the Messiah? I'm using the same exegetical standard that we agreed upon at the beginning of the video.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not following exactly all your framing, and maybe that's on me. But when he says that this person, who I believe he's referring to as the Messiah, is Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, and it's referring to the same phrase is used for El Gabor, which, I went to the wrong verse, which obviously we would agree upon is God. And then what I would argue is that the Messiah does come, but he he offers a sacrifice for sin, and then he returns later, because I believe that the Messiah is also who's discussed in Isaiah 53.
So, using the same criteria that we discussed, the Davidic king that will rule at the end of days, right? Where is the servant of Isaiah 53, or any of the servant songs for that matter, referenced as a king or David?
King or David? He's referred to as a king?
Well, that's what I'm asking, because remember, our standard that we've established together mutually, like the consistent standard that we've developed through all the prophecies we've discussed so far, right? The three that we both agree are exclusive to the Messiah, son of David, all of them mention a Davidic king who will rule at the end of days. We're at a disagreement in Isaiah 9 because I respect the from now part of the now into eternity, where you only respect the eternity part, but sort of you're not really respecting the now and the immediacy of the prophecy and claiming that it can only refer to the Messiah. I'm saying it refers to Hezekiah in the immediate context, just like we agreed with King Solomon, right, in 2 Samuel.
I'm saying that this Isaiah 9 doesn't fit Hezekiah very well at all, is what I'm saying. And I'm saying that Isaiah 53 talks about a servant who will act wisely and should be high and lifted up and shall be exalted.
Right, but
And
where is
so
that
that's
servant in
referring to
Isaiah 53? What I asked is, like, where is it referred to as a king or as David? Because that seems to be the criteria that is mutually agreed upon through. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So he grew up before him as a young plant, as a root out of dry ground. Well, who is the root out of dry ground?
So once again, with Isaiah 53,
hold on. I didn't even answer the question. You gotta.
Yeah.
It said, "There shall come up from a shoot, a sprout, a branch from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit. And the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him. Spirit, and I'm sure you'll agree this is messianic. Spirit of wisdom,
Right.
Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit and knowledge of the fear of the Lord. And his delight will be in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what his eyes see, decide disputes by his ears hear, and yada yada yada."
So I want to be clear. I also agree that Isaiah 53 is messianic. I do not agree that it is exclusive to the Messiah. Just like how we disagree about Isaiah 9, I didn't say that's not messianic. What I disagree is that it's exclusive because in the immediate context it refers to King Hezekiah. Just as in Isaiah 49, right? In Isaiah 49:3, I think we both agree that when it says, "He said to me, you are my servant Israel in whom I will boast," that this is the same servant as Isaiah 53, correct? I saw you do a video on this. Now, what's interesting is, what does it say the servant is? Does it say the servant is Israel in Isaiah 49:3, who we both agree refers to the Messiah, son of David? Or does it say that this servant is David or King or Jesus? What does it say?
A connection that he's the branch.
But it says Israel, right? Does it say, you agree, and I saw the video of you made a video about this. It went viral. It had like hundreds of thousands of views. And you said that this is actually Jesus when it says, "You are my servant Israel." You claim that's the same servant as Isaiah 53, right? And Isaiah 49:3? Is that the same?
I'm saying he talks about, in the context at times, about Israel, like the nation. And he calls them like blind and deaf and dumb.
Okay.
And then he talks about a servant who is anointed by the Spirit. Well, who is anointed by the Spirit? We just saw.
Well, he said to me. Who is the me there when he says in Isaiah 49:3? It says, "He said to me, you are my servant Israel about whom I will boast." Who is me? Isaiah 49:3.
Okay. I'm going to back up because
I'm just curious. Who's the me in your estimation? Who is, "He said to me, you are my servant Israel in whom I will boast"? Who is me?
Who is me?
Yeah.
Here?
Yeah, in Isaiah 49:3, when it says
in Isaiah 49.
Yeah.
Okay, so
who is me? He said to me, "You are my servant Israel in whom I will boast."
Okay, what I'm saying is that Jesus is, or at least Jesus, excuse me, 52:3 or 53:2 is referring to the branch, who is in 11, who's anointed by the Spirit, who is also right here, who is also the servant. "My Spirit, whom I uphold," again, he pours out his Spirit on him. "I will pour out my Spirit upon him. He will bring justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he shall not break. Faintly burning wick he will not quench till he bring forth justice. He will not be discouraged till he established justice in the earth," so on and so forth. And then it says that he will give you as a covenant for all people, a light for all nations, to open the eyes that are blind, and to bring forth the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prisoners who sit in darkness. So it's the Davidic king. This describes this is the servant, but this also describes the same person who's anointed by the Spirit, who comes from the stump of Jesse.
Amen. I'm not saying that this isn't about the Messiah. Remember, my contention is that you're claiming it's exclusive to the Messiah when we both know you did the video that said Isaiah 49:3 is the same servant as Isaiah 53. Yet exegetically, it never mentions that servant being a king or David explicitly, right? It says the servant is Israel explicitly. And I asked you before, I'll ask again, Isaiah 49:3, he said to me, you are my servant Israel, about whom I will boast. Who is me? I just want to get an answer to that, if you'd be so kind to let me know who is me in Isaiah 49:3. He said to me, you are my servant Israel, and about whom I will boast. So who is me?
I'm assuming it's the servant. I mean, who else would it be?
Why wouldn't it be? You don't think it's Isaiah? Isn't he the one being spoken to? He said to me, you are my servant Israel, about whom I will boast.
Are you trying to say that Isaiah is the servant?
Well, I'm asking you, who is me? Like, what is the most exegetical, obvious, Occam's razor? Who is me?
What difference does it make? What about the rest of the whole context? Like,
the context says it's Israel, correct? It doesn't say Davidic king, which seems to be more specific.
I'm making a connection that it's a Davidic king because he's the one he's the branch, going back to 11, and then he's anointed by the Spirit, going back to 42, and then I'm saying that there's an Israel who gathers Israel, so he himself cannot just be like the nation himself, who is also a light to all the nations, which I don't know who that's supposed to describe other than Jesus. What other Jew has brought the worldwide worship of the God of Israel?
Well, let's look at the order of Isaiah 49:3, if we may.
Well, right? I mean, I feel like you're harping on like semantics here instead of like looking at the bigger picture.
I don't know. I'm trying to be exegetically consistent, right?
I feel like you're just trying to like ask leading questions to get me to just say whatever you want me to say, and you're not looking at the bigger picture. You're not.
I mean, the verse does say Israel is the servant, correct?
You're just brushing them aside and going, yeah, but who is he talking to here? Like is the branch? So is Isaiah 53? You said he's about the Messiah, right?
I said it's not exclusive to the Messiah based on the exegetical criteria that we developed earlier, right? We both agreed that the Davidic king was more specific, right?
It's about a suffering servant who bears the sins of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also, according to this verse, becomes a light to all nations.
Yeah.
Then who else would this describe?
Well, once again, what order does this happen in, right? It says, well, let's read the verses. He said to me, Isaiah would be the most obvious reading of that. You are my servant Israel, and about whom I will boast, right? And I said, I toiled in vain. I consumed for strength, for not in vanity. Surely my right is with the Lord, and my deed is with God. So first, the message wasn't well received, and then it says, and now the Lord who formed me in the womb as a servant to him, and said to bring Jacob back to him, and Israel shall be gathered to him, and I will be honored in the eyes of the Lord, and my God was my strength. And he said, it is too late for you to be my servant to establish the tribes of Jacob and bring back the besieged of Israel. What's the order here? First, Israel is brought back. Jacob is brought back. It says, but I will make you a light of nations so that my salvation shall be until the end of the earth. So what is the order? First, Israel is brought back to its fullness, and then the Gentiles are brought back. So that's the chronology of what happens if we're taking the text.
Who have the Gentiles been worshiping in the past 2,000 years?
Well, not the God of Israel, clearly, if they're worshiping Jesus, because that's the point, right? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Who do you think we think he is?
I know that's what you think, but that's not what Isaiah is saying he is. He's not saying the God of Israel is Jesus. He's certainly not saying that. And he's not saying the servant is Jesus. He says the servant is Israel.
The servant of Israel be the people, the remnant of Israel that believes and was actually accepted the Messiah.
Why can't that be? It's very interesting because in the book of Acts chapter 13, Paul and Barnabas actually do identify themselves as the servant of Isaiah 49:3 through 6, right? They actually quote that verse, and they say that they are a part of that. So it's interesting that they also agree with me that when it says my servant Israel in whom I will boast, it's not referring.
Agree with you. I'm not agreeing with that premise. Don't assume agreement too quickly, bro.
I don't know. We can go to Acts chapter 13. I think it's verses 46 and 47, where they actually quote directly from Isaiah 49:6. And yeah, it's pretty interesting to me. And they say, this is what the Lord has commanded us. So who is the us? Paul and Barnabas?
I think they're probably referring to Jesus. Why would they think that they're the light to all nations? Even if you try to interpret it that way, Jesus says you are the light of the world. I mean, so like they're just saying that the light to the Gentiles to bring salvation to the ends of the earth. Do you think that Paul and Barnabas thought that they brought salvation to anybody? They're just bringing the message of salvation.
I don't know, man. That's what it says in the verse. You asked me, and you were,
It's what it says in the verse if you're being incredibly pedantic. But clearly, I don't think Paul or Barnabas thought that they died for the sins of the world.
I mean, regardless, what it says is that the servant is Israel.
Terrible. Regardless, your point is.
I mean, it says the servant's Israel, point blank.
Kindly. Your point is garbage. Your point is absolute trash.
All right. I mean, it says the servant's Israel, point blank, and you say that's the same servant as Isaiah 53. So, is it secret? Can you show me anywhere else in the Hebrew Bible where the word Israel is used for secret code word for Jesus and only Jesus? If you can do that, I'll become a Christian. Aside from your eisegetical interpretation of Isaiah 49:3, if you can show me where the word Israel is used in the Hebrew Bible, anywhere else, aside from your eisegetical interpretation of Isaiah 49:3, using that word Israel, exclusively, right? Exclusively the Messiah, son of David, and no one else, that word Israel, I will become a Christian. Can you do that for me?
So you need it's basically the exact word fallacy then. Is that what you want?
I'm saying we came up with a mutually agreed upon exegetical standard, and you're saying in this one instance,
the connections are incredibly clear. It says that he's the root, he's the one with the Spirit, he's the one that's anointed, he's the one in 61. I would say that 9, 11, 61, 42 are all talking about the same person, which is all, you connect them all to 53:2. If 53:2, he's saying he's the branch. And Jeremiah and Zechariah all say that the branch is the one who is the Messiah. And then the Messiah is called Mighty God in 9:6. And then he's the one who is anointed, who brings a light to all the nations. And you're saying, wait, this is going to happen at the end of days when, like, dude, just look around you. We already have been worshiping the God of Israel for the past 2,000 years. I think you're just sticking your head in your sand and, like, being pedantic over, like, and yelling eisegesis and all this other stuff. Like, dude, what are you talking about?
In Isaiah 9:6, it refers to this child as Aviad, eternal father. Do you believe that Jesus is the eternal father, that he is the father? The son is called by the name of the father?
No, it's father of eternity. It's saying that he's
so it's not hyper literal there, but he must be mighty God in the most hyper literal sense.
Tovia Junior, thanks for coming there, buddy. Thanks for coming.